My name is Tim Hall. I'm an organiser for Cambridge Citizens, which is the newest chapter of Citizens UK. Citizens UK are a civic alliance, and we are structured in terms of chapters across the country. I think there are about 20 and around 550 civil society organisations are members across the country. Democracy has many definitions. But, first and foremost, it means the basic capacity to exercise some influence over your environment, um, neighborhood, town, city, region, country, world. And that just being kind of core to what it is to be a human being and to flourish. It means many things to different people. I think the key thing for me is kind of use it or lose it. Maybe like an aging person's limb. It's one of those things. It's not enough to just put an X in a box every 4 years. Um, it, I think that democracy, in order to survive and thrive, needs to be part of a daily practice, part of the culture and air that we breathe. And that's why I do what I do. That's why I'm a community organizer, which is just to just kind of normalize and um, make people aware that thinking about your own self-interest and understanding other people's self-interest and finding common purpose, around for which you can win change is just a daily activity. It's nothing special. You don't need a degree or a doctorate to do that. Anyone can do that, and it's part of what it is to be human. I'd like to add that institutions are important in my view, because it's all very well to develop your own interest in politics, but where do people gather, and where are the settings in which you can um, meet others, understand their unique perspective, their self-interest, um, and like a kind of marketplace or an area where you can come together. So institutions are important: schools, educational settings, places like school gates as well, where parents meet, faith institutions, these kinds of places where people from different backgrounds come together and can, um, you know, think about a common life together. So, yeah, institutions are very important, I would say, and it's not something that really you can do on your own. It's about institutions supporting citizens to be more active and participate in democracy on a day-to-day basis. We're a membership organisation of institutions, and part of the kind of challenge and agitation around that is that if you want to be involved on a daily basis in politics, you need an institution or association. You need a setting in which to do that, to build power with others in that organisation, and link up with people in different organisations. So institutions are very important in a vibrant civil society and democracy, in our view. I taught politics for many years. Um, I used to teach politics at East London University, and I became more and more aware that I didn't really have a relation to the subject that I was teaching. I did, in the sense that I was politically active. I'd vote, go on demonstrations and marches, Um, and but as a kind of living, breathing, day-to-day activity, I didn't really have. I conscientious citizen, voted, read the paper, developed my opinions and views, swapped them on social media. It wasn't really enough. So I felt the lack of a day-to-day practice and activity of um, meeting others and um, having one-to-ones, understanding where people were coming from, not um, not falling for the trap that if someone is different from you, you can't do things together. You can't you know work on some things that you agree on and respect each other's differences. So that was what I was lacking. It felt my relation to politics was a very kind of abstract one, a theoretical one. So I talk about rights, different models of democracy, and teach classes on this, etc. But there was nothing there was nothing tangible. There was no practice, really. There was no living practice that I could um, reflect on. That was the gap for me, and that's what drew me into organising. It was a real revelation to me. It was around about 15 years ago. Started to get involved in living wage campaigns at the university initially, and then beyond in places like London City Airport, Newham City Council, etc. And just the kind of working with organisers and understanding, learning the craft of that, of how you relate to others, build trust, um, build common purpose, and hold people in power and decision makers to account in a respectful way. That was all a revelation to me. None of it's rocket science, but it's just not part of my day-to-day life. Well, I think we're just picking up on that the image earlier of the physiotherapist, use it or lose it. Market culture has predominated really over other cultures, to the detriment of civic culture, which is precisely this. I mean, you go back a few decades, it's normal for people to, have a kind of rich associational life, and would through those links participate in democracy. Increasingly, that seems to be, viewed as a bit of a mugs game. Why would I do that rather than think about myself and get on, etc. I lament, the kind of waning of that culture. I also would point to disintegration of trust and loss of trust. Many causes of that. Not that I'm particularly qualified to articulate them fully here, but if you don't trust someone, if there's no trust, you can't have democracy. It's what democracy is promised, is premised upon. You think about something like an election or anything like that, it's premised on the idea that you accept the result. You're not going to say your opponent cheated, or it's what we're having now, and that seems to spring from really corrosive and pervasive cynicism about public life, about the reasons why people go into public life, about the opportunities and possibilities that participation in public life affords. So I'd point to those two things really: disintegration of trust, which seems to have really kind of accelerated, enhanced doubtless by social media, over the last 2 decades, and just the loss of displacement of civic culture by an all-pervasive market culture. we're not really a campaign organisation. We're a training organisation, really. So the kind of methods, the repertoires, the practices, which used to be commonplace in civic culture that we've lost. There's a tradition in which that is kind of transmitted and handed down and passed on. So part of that curriculum is what we call the paradigm, which is the world, the world as it is, the world as it should be, or reality and utopia, if you like. And I guess the key lesson of that is that you're in between, necessarily in between. That these two worlds are in tension, and importantly so. That if you cut the kind of guide ropes and float off into the world as it should be, which I think a lot of politics of protest does. You think of something like an activity like prefiguring. Think about your party now, this whole thing, they're saying it's got to start democracy, it's got to start the way it continues. So it's got to start as radical democracy. So it's like you kind of create the utopia, you prefigure it in some way, and then society eventually, becomes that. If you stick to your principles, I think that's so profoundly wrong. Because people are people, and that that utopia quickly falls apart. In terms of people's capacity and agendas, etc. So anyone that's ever kind of been involved in one of those political experiments, will recognise, that process of falling apart, endless meetings and never end arguments. We've been there, haven't we? So that's a problem of, in my view, and for an organizer, that's someone that is rooted in the world as it should be, and is determined to kind of act in this way in the face of the world as it is, and what's going to win in terms of that encounter. The world as it is will reassert itself in the face of the world as it should be. At the same time, if you lose any sight of a world that could be different, to say this, this is a transactional world of search and projection of power, and that's it. That's equally dangerous. So it's so important to keep those worlds in tension, to keep your mind in hell and not despair, so to speak. So that's utopian thinking is dangerous. As all of these guys in Silicon Valley, they're utopians, and that's not looking good, is it? Not dying, colonizing Mars, whatever, uh, kind of move away from the idea that we'll vote in some government that will change it. I think it's on us. I think it's on us really, rather than to look for a brilliant leader that's going to deliver this. We need good politicians and brilliant leaders, but I think it's for us to do. So for, in my work, it's very much what's putting you under pressure. What would you like to change? What are you going to do about it? Is that all right with you? Are you just going to walk on in a sense, or what are you going to do about it? What do you want to? Here's what you could do. You want to put time into that. This is what it's going to take. Um, so, I think it is for people and for communities to take back power. I say take it back. I mean, I don't think people can ever fully lose it. They just forget that they have it. This about the loss of trust and cynicism. I mean, one part of this is powerlessness, just feeling, utterly powerlessness. Whoever you vote in doesn't make any difference, and they lie to you, etc., etc. But actually, people have power, and when they realise that, it's a real revelation. It's such an important thing to be able, even if it's a small thing, like I spoke to a head teacher this week about just locating a zebra crossing or a pedestrian crossing outside the school, a small thing like that. It's so eminently doable. Um, but we've just forgotten that that is actually a legitimate move, that, schools can come together with other civil society organisations and shops as well, and say, "Look, it's what we need." It is for people to realise that they have power and build it and start shaping things in a direction that they want to see. Both markets and state.